8 weeks after the world became frozen, humanity was trapped within these ice layers. One day, a man who was frozen in the ice passed away. Even his body was beginning to decompose. However, there was a survivor. He took off his mask and sighed. He noticed that this place had yet to be explored. Food and fuel, once easily accessible, had become precious. He investigated the ice layer and realized that it seemed thick enough to be quite safe. However, as he walked on the ice, he began to slip when an earthquake occurred. This new frozen world was like a message from God, telling them that human civilization is as fragile as thin ice, shattered by a single blow. The ice broke and he fell underground. He took out his tool and slammed it into the ice. It didn't stop his fall but slowed him down. Fortunately, there was no obstacle beneath him, which made his fall easier. There is an old saying that another escape leads to great fortune, so there must be some good fortune here. Unfortunately, in this frozen world, what is even more despairing is a giant monster named Pi. This monster preys on humans. Upon seeing this creature, the protagonist ran for his life. This blessing was not for sure. He had really messed up. But suddenly, something strange happened. The ice broke and fell, piercing the creature and causing blue blood to spray from it. He wondered if the reason behind the ice falling was because of the earthquake earlier. Regardless, he needed to save himself first. Suddenly, a debris from the collapsing structure falls due to a tremor. As a result, a giant explosion of snow burst over him and he was buried in the snow with one hand sticking out. A strange blue creature approached him. Suddenly his eyes then turned blue, as if electricity had gone into them. He wondered what had just happened. He was in a strange daze, but unknowing to him there was a strange blue substance on the back of his neck. He believed that he had been gone long enough, so he better go back home, but he wouldn't be going back empty-handed. In a large skyscraper building, much of the city was frozen in ice. The only road back home was through this passage. Day after day, unsure how long this kind of life would continue, he compared the outside with the inside of the building. The situation inside was not much better. When the disaster struck, many people sought refuge inside the building, which was now running low on resources. He wondered what these people might resort to. In this post-apocalyptic world, nobody could assure themselves that they wouldn't cross that line. He realized that it seemed those guys hadn't started patrolling yet, so he better move quickly. He knocked on the door, and a blonde-haired girl opened it for him. Immediately, she hugged him. He told her to lock the door, and she smiled, declaring that she wanted to see him. But because of his indifferent expression, she inquired if he didn't want to see her. He blushed and stated that, of course, he did, but he told her to lock the door properly. She asked if his girlfriend wasn't even as important as a door lock. He then showed her a sucker, stating that he had brought it for her. She inquired what it was, and he told her it was chocolate. She kissed him on the cheek and told him that he was the best. However, she inquired if it was only this. He told her yes, and that he almost got eaten by a monster for it, so she must eat it quickly. However, there was a blue stain on his bag, and she crushed the sucker, becoming suspicious of him. He wondered what he should do as he hadn't found any decent food for several days. The only thing he had collected earlier was what they were considering eating today. The situation with the seeds they had planted before wasn't looking very good either. If they ate the seeds, it meant they had completely lost hope. If they continued like this, everyone would inevitably lose their sanity. If those monsters weren't poisonous, the people in this building wouldn't have to suffer from hunger or encounter those guys anymore. Thinking positively, he considered that the monsters could be useful fuel. At least in this frozen world, they wouldn't freeze to death. Suddenly, he realized that today was Valentine's Day. How could he forget? He called for his girlfriend and apologized to her but noticed she wasn't there. He wondered where she had gone. Suddenly, he heard knocking at his door, but it was in code, so he knew it must be his girlfriend. He wondered what she was doing outside. When he opened the door, he was hit in the face with an iron bat and lost his shoe in the process. A man walked in and told him, "Merry Christmas, Brother Emo." The bat was dented due to the force used, and his girlfriend was holding him. He was placing his hand around her waist. With his injured face, he inquired why she betrayed him. She made a hideous expression and announced that he had the nerve to ask that. She inquired if he thought that a sucker could fool her. She exclaims that she knows about him hiding all the food. He tried to explain, but she interrupted, inquiring if his bag was just filled with northwest wind. She asked if he had even lied to his own girlfriend. Is he even human? Luo Julong gave him some advice. This is an apocalyptic era, not a civilized society anymore. This is an area that follows the law of the jungle. He was weak, a person who couldn't even support his own woman. Which woman would be willing to follow him? Those who are weak have only two choices: either attach themselves to the strong or become prey to the strong. He ordered him to hand over the food. The protagonist inquired where he would find any food, and Julong prepared to swing her weapon, stating that it seemed he didn't want to rely on the strong, so he could only become food for the stronger. The protagonist raised his hand in defense and inquired what was going to happen. The man brutally hit him repeatedly with the weapon, and then his friends joined in. One of the men commented that they turned the house upside down and only found moody greens. The man commented that the meat of the weak was also good. They were not picky eaters. He ordered his subordinate to give him a knife. The protagonist slowly lost consciousness, and the scene above him faded. Suddenly, a voice stated, "That's good. It shall be you." At that moment, we see him in his office, fast asleep. Suddenly, his eyes shone with a blue light, and he quickly got up, slamming the table and calling Julong. He wondered what the situation was. He was not dead. He was completely intact. There were only 28 hours left until the whole world froze over. The protest in Queens was still ongoing. The city police department had deployed a large number of officers to maintain law and order. In Manhattan, people enjoyed themselves at an exclusive gathering known as Pleasure. On Integrity Street in Brooklyn, the gang were doing their business. No one in the entire city was aware of what was about to happen, except for one person. Suddenly, a beautiful aurora appeared in the sky. The people were enchanted by its beauty and began taking pictures. The protagonist knew this was the harbinger of the ice. Suddenly someone called him. At this point, it could only be his girlfriend, who had brutally ended his life. He remembered vividly her horrible expression and the way she told him she was a frail woman who could only rely on the strong. He hated her now as he was deceived by her appearance. He must put an end to this once and for all. He answered the phone, and she told him about the beautiful aurora and asked if he had seen it. At that moment, she inquired if he could give her some money, as her credit card seemed to be maxed out. In a cold voice, he told her they should break up and that she shouldn't call him ever again. She inquired what was wrong with him, but he hung up and deleted her contact. Since he had a second chance, a woman like her would become a threat to him. She should just freeze to death in the upcoming frozen world. This time, he would prepare properly. In his last life, within 24 hours before the freeze, the temperature had gradually dropped to freezing point. Counting from the current time, there were less than 28 hours left until the entire world was frozen. It might seem like plenty of time, but as the temperature dropped, people would become aware of the looming crisis. Society would become even more chaotic, so there was only an hour of real time left for him to collect resources. Besides gathering resources in the initial chaotic environment, he would also need some items to protect himself, like a gun. Suddenly, some police officers passed by him. One of them exclaimed, "Captain, I have a hunch that this guy is suspicious, lurking around the street late at night." His captain told him he will show him his skills. The captain got out of the car and told him to stop, holding onto his gun and ordering him not to move. He put his hands up and the rookie cop informed his radio that a suspected thief had been found on 4th Avenue. This neighborhood had been restless lately, so they mistook him for a thief. The officer inquired what was in his hands. He told them it was a smartphone, but the protagonist didn't have time to waste with these two snow pigs. He hoped they would let him go after the inspection if everything was okay. The captain told the newbie not to approach the suspect recklessly. Then, as he was shaking, he inquired what was in his bag and instructed him to take it out. He told the officer that he was just an office worker and that his bag